And welcome. We are live from Chester Township, Pennsylvania, Delaware County, one of the critical counties around Philadelphia that will help determine who wins the White House. Welcome to CNN's presidential town hall with the Democratic nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm Anderson Cooper. Now, in this room, we have assembled a group of 32 Pennsylvania voters who say they are still undecided or persuadable. All of them are registered to vote. Some cast votes for Joe Biden in 2020, others for Donald Trump. Some didn't vote at all, and for some, this is their first election. Many are leaning right now to one candidate or another, but they all say they have yet to make their final choice. Now, we found these voters working with a nonpartisan research firm, as well as business and religious groups, universities, and other civic organizations. These voters are asking their own questions tonight, selected by CNN to cover a variety of topics. You may see them holding a piece of paper when they're asking their question. It has their question on it. That is a question they have come up with. It has not been edited in any way by CNN. We also invited former President Donald Trump to participate in a town hall or a debate. He declined. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President Kamala Harris. Vice President, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. You have a mic right here. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Thanks so much for being with us. We're going to get to the audience in just a second. I want to start by asking you, though, for weeks you have been calling Donald Trump unstable, unhinged. You've called him dangerous. You've quoted General Milley recently, who called him a fascist. Today, you quoted General Kelly, who said that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler. Yeah. But there are tens of millions of Americans right now who have heard all those things, and they don't buy it, or even if they do, they're still going to vote for Donald Trump. He's arguably more popular now than ever. You have 13 days to go. What do you say to those voters to convince them? Because some of them are in this room.
Sure, and I thank you all for taking the time to be here. And you could be doing a number of other things with your time. So this really is proof that we love our country. People are engaged, Anderson, and really want to talk about the issues. And so the issue that you raise, yes, I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable, and unfit to serve. And I don't necessarily think that everyone has heard what you and I have heard repeatedly, which is the people who know Donald Trump best, the people who worked with him in the White House, in the Situation Room, in the Oval Office, all Republicans, by the way, who served in his administration, his former chief of staff, his national security advisor, former secretaries of defense, and his vice president have all called him unfit and dangerous. They have said explicitly he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. They have said he should never again serve as president of the United States. We know that is why Mike Pence is not running with him again, why the job was empty. And then today we learned that John Kelly, a four-star Marine general, who was his longest serving chief of staff, gave an interview recently in the last 2 weeks of this election, talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is. And I think one has to think about, why would someone who served with him, who is not political, a four-star Marine general, why is he telling the American people now? And frankly, I think of it as he's just putting out a 911 call to the American people. Understand what could happen if Donald Trump were back in the White House. And this time, we must take very seriously those folks who knew him best and who are career people are not going to be there to hold him back. At least before, there were folks who we know what he would say, but they would restrain him. Imagine now Donald Trump in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room. He who has openly admired dictators, said he would be a dictator on day one. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said he is a fascist to the core. So I think that when the American people reflect, especially those who are undecided, on who you should listen to, don't take my word for it. In fact, go online and listen to John Kelly, his voice, talking about what he thinks of Donald Trump 2 weeks before the election. Because I think we all know, to your point, Anderson, it is close, but there are undecided voters who clearly, by being here, have an open mind, want to talk in a way that is grounded in issues and fact. And when they hear these facts, I think it compels a lot of people to be concerned about the future of our country with Donald Trump at the lead.
You've quoted General Milley calling Donald Trump a fascist. You yourself have not used that word to describe him. Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted. Again, look at their careers. These are not people, with the exception, I think, of only Mike Pence. These were not politicians. These are career people who have served in the highest roles in national security, who have served as generals in our military, who are highly respected. Talking about the person who would be commander in chief, not to mention what we know and what they've told us about how he talks about the military, servicemen and women, referring to them as suckers and losers, how he demeans people who have taken an oath to sacrifice their life for our country. And I do believe, Anderson, that part of this is why, even just this week, I traveled this state and others with Liz Cheney, former Congress member who was a very high-ranking Republican. She has endorsed me. Her father, the former Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, is voting for me. Over 400 previous members of the administration, from Ronald Reagan to both Presidents Bush to Donald Trump even, have endorsed my candidacy. And the reason why, among them, is a legitimate fear based on Donald Trump's words and actions that he will not obey an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. He himself has said he would terminate the Constitution of the United States and wants to earn your vote to stand again behind the seal of the President of the United States? No one standing behind the seal of the President of the United States of America should be in that position saying they want to terminate the Constitution of the United States.
This is Annalise Keene. She's from Philadelphia. She works as a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity. She's registered with no party affiliation. She says she's a Democrat. She's leaning toward voting for you, but says she's yet to make her final decision, in part because of the conflict in the Middle East. Annalise?
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Vice President.
Good evening.
My question is, as president, what would you do to ensure not another Palestinian dies due to bombs being funded by U.S. tax dollars?
So I will say, and I think this is to your point, far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed. It's unconscionable. And we are now at a place where, with Sinwar's death, I do believe we have an opportunity to end this war, bring the hostages home, bring relief to the Palestinian people, and work toward a two-state solution where Israel and the Palestinians in equal measure have security, where the Palestinian people have dignity, self-determination, and the safety that they so rightly deserve.
What do you say to voters who are thinking about supporting a third-party candidate or staying on the couch, not voting at all because of this issue?
Listen, I am not going to deny the strong feelings that people have. I don't know that anyone who has seen the images who would not have strong feelings about what has happened, much less those who have relatives who have died and been killed. And I know people and have talked with people. So I appreciate that. But I also do know that for many people who care about this issue, they also care about bringing down the price of groceries. They also care about our democracy and not having a president of the United States who admires dictators and is a fascist. They also care about the fact that we need practical, common sense solutions from a leader who is willing to work across the aisle on behalf of the American people and not themselves. They want a president who cares about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body, understanding that we're not trying to change anyone's belief, but let's not have the government telling women what to do with their body.
I want you to meet Beth Sandberg. She's a realtor, a mom of four from Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania. She's a registered Democrat, says she's undecided because of concerns about anti-Semitism. Beth?
Hi, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you for remembering we need to bring the hostages home.
Of course.
The rise of anti-Semitism and violence from anti-Semitism has risen greatly on college campuses and on our city streets in the last year. How would you combat this growing trend and protect our young adults?
Thank you, Beth. You are right, and I will say that we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism. It is something that we have to be honest about and we have to deal with. As Attorney General, I actually published a hate crimes report on a regular basis, and anti-Semitism was among the highest forms of hate in our country, and this was before October 7. And we know what we've seen since. Part of what we've got to do is talk with people so that they understand what are the tropes, what are the roots of what we are seeing, so that we can actually have people be more understanding. We need to have laws in place that make those who would commit crimes on behalf of anti-Semitism and hate, that they pay a serious consequence. We need to have the deterrent so that doesn't happen. We need to ensure that college students are safe in their school and feel safe to be able to go to class. But I'm going to tell you what doesn't help. Again, I invite you to listen and go online to listen to John Kelly, the former chief of staff of Donald Trump, who has told us, Donald Trump said, why aren't my generals like those of Hitler's? Like Hitler, who has referred several times, we've heard the reports for years.
Do you believe Donald Trump is anti-Semitic?
I believe Donald Trump is a danger to the well-being and security of America.
He has said that he's casting himself as a protector of Israel. Do you believe you would be more pro-Israel than Donald Trump?
I believe that Donald Trump is dangerous. I believe that when you have a president of the United States who has said to his generals who work for him because he is commander in chief, these conversations, I assume many of them took place in the Oval Office. And if the president of the United States, the commander in chief, is saying to his generals, in essence, why can't you be more like Hitler's generals, Anderson? Come on. This is a serious, serious issue. And we know who he is. He admires dictators, sending love letters back and forth with Kim Jong-un. Talks about the president of Russia, and then most recently, the reports are that in the height of COVID, when most Americans could not get their hands on a COVID test, Americans were dying by the hundreds a day. He secretly sent COVID tests to the president of Russia for his personal use. So again, this election in 13 days is presenting the American people with a very significant decision. And on the one side, on this issue of who is going to model what it means to use the bully pulpit of the President of the United States in a manner that in tone, word, and deed is about lifting up our discourse, fighting against hate, as opposed to fanning the flames of hate, which Donald Trump does consistently. I'm going to tell you, we are an incredible country, and we love our country. Y'all wouldn't be here unless we love our country. And there are certain things where we've just got to come together and realize that we do believe in the importance of healthy debate on real issues, but there are certain standards we've got to have. And, you know, another point that even John Kelly talked about, I believe, and many have, is January 6th, where you have the President of the United States defying the will of the people in a free and fair election and unleashing a violent mob who attacked the United States Capitol. 140 law enforcement officers were attacked. Some were killed. And so I say that to say the American people deserve to have a president who encourages healthy debate, works across the aisle, not afraid of good ideas wherever they come from, but also maintains certain standards about how we think about the role and the responsibility, and certainly not comparing oneself in a clearly admiring way to Hitler.
And we are back with Vice President Kamala Harris. I want you to meet Rob McPherson. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for a local organization. He's registered Republican from Media, Pennsylvania, who told us he's leaning towards voting for you, but has concerns about what he calls shifts in your policy positions. Rob?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Vice President Harris. So welcome to Delco.
Thank you.
Here in Delco, we pride ourselves on being authentic.
Yeah.
And much of what we have much of what you've been saying with regard to issues like law and order and fracking reflect a more centrist view than what people are used to hearing from Kamala Harris, leaving some voters to wonder about the authenticity of your current, more moderate positions. Can you talk a little bit about how your positions have shifted and why?
Sure, and thank you. So first of all, on fracking, I've been very clear. We kind of dispensed with this in 2020. I am not going to ban fracking. I did not as vice president. In fact, as vice president, I cast the tie-breaking vote that now has opened up more fracking leases. My value on the issue of what we need to do to invest in a clean energy economy and a clean energy future has not changed. But frankly, I now have the experience and perspective of having been vice president for almost 4 years. I've traveled the country. I know that we can invest in a clean energy economy and still not ban fracking and still work toward what we need to do to create more jobs and create U.S.-based jobs in a way that will be globally competitive. On the issue of law and order, as you mentioned, I think there's just a whole lot of misinformation, to be honest with you. I have personally prosecuted very serious crime. It's how I started my career. I spent most of my career as a prosecutor, not in Washington, D.C. And as my first priority had and remains as a first priority to me, the safety of the American people. So that has not changed. And sadly, I think that there's a bit of misinformation, if not more than a bit. But I'm glad that you raised the subject so that I can address it. But just, if you don't mind, just let me just finish. Because I think the spirit of your question is really important, and I'm glad you raised it. Our country deserves to have a president of the United States who is not afraid of good ideas and does not stand on pride. If a perspective needs to be informed by different points of view to build consensus and to have a common sense approach. I'm never going to shy away from good ideas. And I'm not going to feel the need to have pride associate with a position that I've taken when the important thing is to build consensus to fix problems. I believe in fixing problems. I love fixing problems. And so I pledge to you to be a president who not only works for all Americans, but works on getting stuff done. And that means compromise. And it doesn't mean compromising your values or your principles, but it does mean working to get stuff done. And I pledge to you I will do that.
Just to be clear, though, what he's referring to, and you point out, too, when you were running for vice president in 2020, you were not talking about banning fracking, but...
No, Anderson, I pledged that I would not ban fracking.
Right, I know. You said you would not ban fracking.
Correct.
You know, you had said in a 2019 town hall, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. In 2017, you talked about Medicare for all. You talked about 2019, raised a hand in debate about if border crossings should be decriminalized. Are all of those issues, which those are not your positions now, are all those issues that you're saying through consensus and getting stuff done you have evolved on?
Well, no, let's take, for example, the issue of Medicare. My point has always been that access to health care should not just be a privilege of those who can afford it. It should be a right for all people. So that is why I have worked on doing what we have done to, one, allow Medicare to negotiate against the big pharmaceutical companies to bring down the cost of prescription medication. We've achieved that in terms of capping the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, capping the cost of annual prescriptions at $2,000 a year for seniors. But my plan moving forward, based on that very principle that I've always had, is as president to have that cap be for everyone and not just for our seniors. The work that I have done that has been about recognizing the importance of dealing with border security, that has never changed. As I said, I have prosecuted transnational criminal organizations. That I did for years before I ever ran in 2019.
I mean, you did raise your hand saying in a debate when asked if border crossing should be decriminalized, but obviously that is not your position.
I never intended, nor will I ever allow America to have a border that is not secure. I believe we need to deal with illegal immigration. There needs to be consequences, which is why part of my plan that I have outlined, and again, please go to KamalaHarris.com. Sorry to throw a website on you, but why not? And you will see that part of my plan includes what we need to do to actually do more as it relates to putting resources in, including increasing penalties for illegal crossing.
And just finally on fracking, you said you're clear you would not ban it as president.
No, I would not ban it as president.
Right, I know you're clear on that. Do you think it is bad for the environment, though?
I think that we have proven that we can invest in a clean energy economy. We can mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. We can work on and sustaining what we need to do to protect this beautiful earth of ours and not ban fracking.
Time is short, so I want to get some more voters in. Tanisha Spall from Lansdowne, Pennsylvania. She works as an education administration manager for the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. Registered Democrat who says she's leaning towards supporting you, has yet to make her final decision. Tanisha, welcome.
Thank you, Anderson. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for joining us this evening. I appreciate that you did acknowledge that we are a country that is faced with problems and issues. With the Supreme Court being plagued with issues, would you be in favor of expanding the court to, say, 12, so each justice has only one circuit court other than Chief Justice to assist in making judgments more balanced?
Well, to your point, there is no question that the American people increasingly are losing confidence in the Supreme Court. and in large part because of the behavior of certain members of that court and because of certain rulings, including the Dobbs decision and taking away a precedent that had been in place for 50 years, protecting a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. So I do believe that there should be some kind of reform of the court, and we can study what that actually looks like. But I do believe, but again, let's just, while you raise the point of the court, understand that, again, in 13 days, the American people will decide who is the next president of the United States. In 13 days, you will decide who is sitting in the Oval Office on January 20th. And on one hand, you have in Donald Trump someone who has increasingly proved himself to be unstable and who, as we have established and the people close to him have established, he is unfit to serve. Somebody who on January 20th, you can be sure, will spend full time, like we know, and we've seen the image mentally of him sitting in the dining room off of the Oval Office, watching for hours as people violently attack the Capitol. You can be sure, because he has said he would weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies, that you can look at a Donald Trump in the White House after January 20th, sitting in that Oval Office, plotting his revenge. He has talked about the enemies within. We haven't even raised that subject, Anderson. The enemies within. He's talking about the American people. He's talking about journalists, judges, nonpartisan election officials. He has talked about, as John Kelly has talked about, can he send the military after peaceful protesters? And he's going to sit there unstable, unhinged, plotting his revenge, plotting his retribution, creating an enemies list. I'm going to tell you, my list will be a list of how I address and continue to address the issues that you all are raising this afternoon and evening. It will be a to-do list about how we can impact the American people and lift up the American people and address some of the challenges that we continue to face. So,
Vice President Kamala Harris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Anderson.
And thanks for watching. Thanks to all the voters here. Be sure to join CNN on November 5th for Election Night in America right here on CNN. Jake Tapper and Erin Burnett pick it up right now.
Anderson, thank you. You've been watching CNN's Town Hall with Vice President Kamala Harris and undecided voters. Less than 2 weeks from the election. A lot of tough questions for the vice president there. It seemed as though the voters were divided into three basic groups. Liberals who had not heard enough from her, progressives worried that she was not progressive enough, and Republicans who are wary of Donald Trump and wanting to hear more from the vice president. She focused a lot more on Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say, than she did on many specifics in terms of what she would do as president. But she did go into some of her plans for small businesses and the like. Of course, with only 13 days to go, and Trump and Harris fighting over these last few undecided voters, and in fact, trying to get undecided voters to even vote. We'll see whether or not she achieved what she needed to achieve this evening. Dana Bash, your thoughts?
Well, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, you know, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more, but what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one. You know, some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there. Having said that, any time that she can be in front of an audience and interacting with voters is a win as far as her campaign goes. And they are very happy about that.
I thought her drawing the contrast with Trump, something that she's been really trying to do in the last several weeks that we've seen, where she's gone after him as unstable, unfit for the presidency, saying he doesn't belong behind the seal of the office anymore after he suggested terminating the Constitution. She had a new angle for that tonight, and that's because of John Kelly, his former chief of staff, coming out with his on-the-record comments yesterday, saying he met the definition of a fascist and that he's admired Hitler. That was something that she was within seconds of taking the stage. And that first question from Anderson, where she said that, yes, she agrees Trump is a fascist, where she took that moment and tried to really sharpen it and make news out of it from where, she's been talking about this for weeks, but tried to draw that contrast even further for a lot of people, including the people in this audience who are undecided and maybe have not heard those comments or aren't familiar with what John Kelly has been saying. I thought it was really interesting that she came out of the gate and that was one of the first things that she was talking about in the town hall.
Although, John, I do wonder, I think after 8 years of Donald Trump, people are aware of Donald Trump's persona, his proclivity for controversy, his potential to offend, and the like. And I wonder if you think maybe she did too much of what Caitlin's talking about.
I think that is a fascinating question, is how do you balance it, right? How much time do you have with any voter, whether it's in a TV ad or it's in a town hall? In that time that you have, they're watching you. What is your priority, right? This is how much time I have. What do I want to tell you? And how do I want to use that time? Donald Trump is more popular than he's been. He's now, in this race, his political standing is higher in this race at this point than it was in 2016 or 2020. And so she does need to push Donald Trump down.
Okay.
That is her priority. She does need to try to disqualify Donald Trump. Try to remind people who voted for Trump in 2016 and Biden in 2020, who are thinking about going back to Trump because of their pre-COVID Trump economy nostalgia, or he's done the job before and I don't know her. She needs to remind them of that. Then you got to quickly make that pivot. And to Dana's point, I think she did some of it tonight. I was about to say she didn't do enough of it, and then I thought she closed very strongly with the values part. She did the we the American people. But that's what voters ask you, who is she, right? The faith part was interesting. People at home might agree or disagree with it, but she talked about herself, what animates her, that she prays, sometimes twice a day, with a little smile. That's not an issue for voters. That's not taxes. That's not abortion. That's not spending. That's not national security. But it's who is your president when hard things happen. And people just don't know it. That may not be fair to her. She got the nomination in July. She's a vice president. People don't know a lot about their vice president. Some of this has nothing to do with her. It's with her job and who she is. At the end, the value part, we get things done, pragmatic. Why does it have to be so partisan? There was some of it there. Where I think she fails sometimes is to connect it more to her policies. Right. This may be my fault. I've done 10 of these. So I'm always living prior campaigns and everything, 10 elections. Bill Clinton ran on the same economic agenda she is. I'm going to raise taxes on the rich, and I'm going to cut taxes on the middle class. Democratic consultants at the time told him, don't do it. Don't raise taxes. Don't say you're going to raise taxes. They're going to say you're Walter Mondale. They're going to say you're Michael Dukakis. They're going to push you left. He had a brand where he could look people in the eye and say, I'm on your side. I'm fighting for the middle class. Right. Putting people first. That's the connection she has to make to that you can trust me.
Which is why she talks about her middle class
to do this. It's the personal part is sometimes missing. And again, it may be unfair to her, to your point about a different standard, because as she has not taken the time as vice president, or they did not let her take the time as vice president, to more develop her brand so that in crunch time you know who she is.
Yeah. Look, I think it was a mixed night. Okay, I think she was very strong coming out of the gate, and she obviously came with a purpose, which she wanted to. They want to shine a focus on, this latest chapter with the Hitler story of John Kelly, but generally anti-democratic behavior. And the threat that represents. And she obviously was well prepared for that. She was very strong on, as she has been, on abortion rights because she feels passionately about it. She could be clinical on some of these economic issues. She was great on the long-term care for the the elderly, to help people in the sandwich
The anecdote about helping her mother put on her sweater and her final
But
days.
the things that would concern me, and then she did one thing at the end that I thought was really important. The things that would concern me is when she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking. And so, on certain questions like that, on immigration, I thought she missed an opportunity because she would acknowledge no concerns about any of the administration's policies. And that's a mistake. Sometimes you have to concede things, and she didn't concede much. But I'll tell you something. John King mentioned Bill Clinton. No one's going to be Bill Clinton, but you do want to relate to the people in front of you. She didn't do a lot of that. She didn't ask them questions. She didn't address them particularly. So she was giving set pieces too much. But she said something at the end that I thought should be actually a frame. If they want to go down this road, this is a great frame. She said, he'll have an enemies list, I'll have a to-do list, and the to-do list is going to be the concerns you mentioned tonight. I think that is a fundamental argument here. What are their respective motivations, and who's going to actually work on the stuff that is going to impact positively on your life?
You mentioned the question back and forth with Anderson about Israel, and that was actually structurally in the way that this town hall was conducted. She talked about Gaza and then was talking about Israel and anti-Semitism back to back, which I know stood out to you.
Yes, I think that she is running into an incredible challenge, this cycle of you don't want to alienate Jewish voters who are heartbroken after October 7th. They want the hostages released. They want a ceasefire deal. And then the Gaza protesters who are critical in Michigan, where you've got a huge Arab population. And I worry that the fear to answer either side of the question makes her alienate both communities. I thought that was one of the weaker moments. There's a direct way to answer the issues with anti-Semitism. And by the way, point them to a history of anti-Semitic actions by the former president, dining with an avowed neo-Nazi, Nick Fuentes, Charlottesville, his language after that. I think those could have been a stronger moment. She's clearly very nervous.
She didn't bring any of those things up.
Yeah, those are key constituencies. But what I thought she did extraordinarily well is they clearly have data that this John Kelly story, the unfitness, the danger of Donald Trump is breaking through to people, because it was almost like, what was the score of the baseball game? And it was like, well, John Kelly and generals warned this. Yep. I think that they know that that works with a swath of voters that are still gettable now, because that came up in pretty much every other answer.
She kept going back to it.
And I do think it's powerful. And I would add personal stories. She shows a humanity that Donald Trump just doesn't have the same ability to convey. He certainly didn't take care of an ailing parent. He hasn't talked about that. He hasn't talked about his faith in great detail. He hasn't cited scripture or prayer. Those are her moments where I think you see a little more of her, and the public needs that.
Yeah, look, there were flashes. No, there were. You'll get your turn, brother. But there were flashes of the Kamala that I know, who is really a true public servant. She really does work for real people. And in the back of her mind, she is trying to figure out, how do I solve the problem? She sometimes skips, even in person, she'll sometimes skip the human part and get to the problem-solving part. But there were flashes of it. And I think the question, if you're at home trying to figure this out, you can ask, well, could she have done this? Could she have done this better? Your job isn't to do town halls. Your job is to fight for people. Does she seem like somebody who is going to take seriously the problems of ordinary people and try to get an answer? And I think she passed that test. I think that the word salad stuff gets on my nerves. I think that some of the evasions are not necessary. But when she's talking about trying to get you a house, I believe her. When she starts, like, I'm trying to get you to help for your mama who's sick, I believe her. Yeah. When she's talking about, I'm going to do what I can to bring prices down, I may not agree with those tools, but I believe she's going to try to apply them. And so I believe this is somebody who actually cares about people. And I think that she passed that test tonight. So on how she did it and some of that stuff got on my nerves. But I believe that she's going to fight for people.
But you described it as flashes. But then your follow-up seemed like a much more of a brighter endorsement.
Yeah. But I'm saying that there were flashes of the person, I didn't get a chance to say it because I got interrupted. There were flashes of the person that I know. The flashes of the person I know that I've seen as a district attorney at the grassroots level in San Francisco, fighting for regular people, giving young people an opportunity. Some of those young people, by the way, is going to Congress. I know this woman, and there were flashes of that. And then some other stuff, it got lost in the sauce.
I think Republicans would take another hour of Kamala Harris. We'd just press play, let her keep going. We'd pay for another hour to let her keep not answering the questions. I think Anderson's asking her, well, why haven't you done it? You've been there for 4 years. Why have you done any of this? And the word salad answer she gave to that was just mind-boggling. I mean, it's blown up the internet, her answer to that question. I think the things that are troubling for people were her responses to, Van said about what's she going to do to reduce costs when they asked her at the beginning. We're hurting economically. She said, I'm going to prosecute corporations, right? That's not going to lower costs. How are you going to make things better for me? I'm going to prosecute people. Trump bad is not a message that's going to get her elected. Trump bad message. I disagree with you, Alyssa. There, I don't think it's going to happen.
You're referring to the whole bringing up the Hitler and Atlantic.
You have to bring something else. Say, was she for a wall or was she against a wall? I couldn't tell from her answer. Right? Anderson kept asking her, well, listen, you laughed at the wall, but now it's in your plan. Are you for it or against it? There was so much mishmash in there. I don't know what was going on. I think it's very generous to say that she showed up, right? I think the key, if she loses here in this race, people are going to look back and her team is going to say, we should have been doing this from the very get-go because reps make you better, right? And the more you do this, the better you get. She's still not at it. We're 13 days out from an election, and everyone's hoping she's going to get better. The Wall Street Journal just came out with a poll while this was going on. She's losing altitude rapidly. Rapidly.